Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at today is the structuring of the organisation. And in particular, there are four key tasks to do with structuring of the organisation that will help an organisation then match that structure to the requirements of successful strategy execution or implementation. And the four that we're going to look at today first of all, deciding which value chain activities to perform internally and which ones to outsource. So what things do you need to do as part of your organisational structure and which might be better served by being taken care of by somebody else. Secondly, aligning the organisational structure with your chosen strategy. Deciding how much authority to centralise at the top and how much to delegate to down the line managers and employees. And finally, facilitating collaboration with external partners and strategic allies. Alright, first things first, let's talk about deciding which value chain activities to perform internally and which you are going to outsource. Now basically, wisely choosing which of these activities that you should perform yourself as a company and which to outsource to somebody else can lead to several strategy executing advantages. Things like lower cost. A lot of the time other businesses are more efficient than you are. Heightened strategic focus, less internal bureaucracy, just flattening the whole organisation, leading to speedier decision making, as well as a better arsenal of organisational capabilities. And specifically when we do look to outsource certain parts of our business and our structure, there are a number of benefits that we can see here. First of all, it often helps in outclassing our rivals to do with strategy critical activities, and in turn, in turning a core competence into a distinctive competence. That is, translating something that we do perhaps very well into something that we do better than anybody else and that nobody else can do as well as us. So what we often find is that many firms might be good at a broad range of activities, but very few are good at all of them. Certainly it's very difficult to be the best at every single activity within your value chain. If you think back to earlier in the semester when we broke down an organisation to those different parts of the value chain. And as I say, very few organisations are the best at all of those different functions. So what we often see is certain parts that perhaps a firm can't spend enough time or money on, or just recognises it doesn't do that well, outsourcing those to another firm who will hopefully do it much more efficiently and just better overall. Outsourcing also decreases bureaucracies. It'll flatten your structure, lead to faster decision making, as well as shorten the response time to changing market conditions. It just speeds the whole process up. You don't have to go through as many different people, different layers and levels of the organisation if you have your actual company focusing on a fewer number of activities. It also adds to a firm's capabilities and contributes to better strategy execution and implementation through partnerships with suppliers and channel partners who, as I say, are usually more efficient at whatever it is you're outsourcing than you can do yourself. The second task, once you've decided which parts you are going to outsource and which you are going to maintain and perform yourself, is aligning your firm's organisational structure with your chosen strategy. Now, when we talk about structure, we're discussing the formal and informal arrangement of tasks, responsibilities, lines of authority, and reporting relationships for the firm. A lot of the time, people, when they think of structure, they think of the physical buildings and so on that they have in place within that particular company. And while that is true, the main part of organisational structure deals with the relationships between the different people in the organisation, and in particular the different layers of management and the non-managers working underneath them. So as you can see, it's about who reports to whom, who is whose boss, and which way does the communication go in an organisation. What we tend to find is that structure is best aligned with your chosen strategy, when first of all its design contributes to the creation of value for the customers. So if you are able to structure your company in a way that it leads to innovation, for example, through your R&D division or department, then that is clearly a way in which it helps create value. Also, when its parts are aligned with one another and also matched to the requirements of the strategy. So at the end of the day, what we're really looking for is a structure that helps facilitate your chosen strategy. So if you've gone down the differentiation path, you're going to want a structure that helps facilitate innovation and creative thinking so that you can come up with ideas that are better than and more unique than what your rivals are offering. It can also lower operating costs through lower bureaucratic costs and operational efficiencies. A key part of aligning your firm's chosen structure with its strategy is making sure that you have the right structure in the first place. And there are 4 here that we're going to go through, that not in detail, certainly in other units you've probably done. We'll go over this in a bit more detail, but just it's a good idea to have a basic understanding here. The first we're going to look at is the simple structure, and this is a very common type of structure that's employed by small businesses. Often when companies first start out, they'll have one person who is the top manager, the owner, the CEO, whatever they'd like to call themselves, and they might have a small group of employees who work for them and underneath them, and they literally do what that top manager says. Once you become a bit bigger as an organisation, you might branch out into the functional structure, which is where we have a number of different departments now, rather than just having one manager and say 3 people working underneath him or her. Now we have whole departments, whole groups of people who specialise in different functions, hence the name. So you'll have an operations department, a marketing department, an R&D department, and so on. So it's basically just a slightly larger, more advanced version of the simple structure. We then can even branch out into the multi-divisional structure, which is, not surprisingly, where we have different divisions within our organisation. So as you can see in the diagram on the right here, we now have a CEO at the top. You might have corporate headquarters staff, and then different divisions within that. So if you're a chemical company, you might have the oil division, the pharmaceuticals division, and the plastics division. A key point to take out of this structure is that you can tell from the diagram, each division may even have a different structure within itself. So you can see in this example here, the oil division has a functional structure where it's broken down into the different functions, as depicted in the second of our structures that we looked above. Then the pharmaceuticals division has a product team structure, and the plastics division has a matrix structure. So you can have different organisational structures even within these different divisions as part of the multi-divisional structure. Now, we touched on the matrix structure. This is the final and most complex of the 4 structures that we're going to look at today. This is where you combine, and you can see that indicated on the left, this is where you combine both your product-based structure, and you can see that going vertically down on the left, as well as the functional structure. So in this example here, you can see we still have our engineering, sales and marketing, purchasing and R&D functions, but then within each of those functions there are different groups based on the different products in which they specialize. So the matrix structure ends up having a few distinguishing features. First of all, high levels of specialization. Obviously now we don't just have people in engineering, we have people who are engineering for product A as well as engineering for product B. So your job becomes more specific in the matrix structure. We also find that people tend to have 2 bosses as part of the matrix structure, because there are now dual lines of reporting. So somebody who works in this little group here now has to report not only back to the head of engineering but also to the product A head manager. So they have 2 bosses. That can be a good thing, but as you can imagine, it does also often lead to increased bureaucracy, and it makes you sort of often have conflicting interests coming from different parties and different who often want different things from you.